computer. Okay, so we are talking about the cost behavior analysis. So, so basically, we are talking about the cost. Okay, the cost might be a function of the activity level. Okay, when activity level changes, and the cost may change, right? Or may remain the same. So the idea here is when the production level changed, how certain other cost will change. So one example would be if you produce more Lego pieces, right? So if the number of the production, okay, units increased, you are producing more Lego figures, right? Then you're going to need more direct materials. So then with that production level up, your direct materials cost will be up. So this is the proportion, right? So you can figure out what is the direct material cost per unit. So this is a variable cost, okay? This is a variable cost. However, if you see that, the plant, right? The factory plant, the renting cost is the same, right? Regardless, how many pieces you are producing, you are paying the fixed amount of money every month. As long as the production level is under the capacity, right? So when you increase the production level, your rent does not increase, right? The rent remains the same. So in this case, that cost does not, that cost remain the same even though the production level increase. So in this case, that cost is a fixed cost, right? Fixed cost. So basically, this kind of analysis is very useful, okay? The cost of behavior analysis is very useful because it's gonna help the managers to make plans in the operations and also make decisions, okay? So the first step for this analysis is to identify what are the key business activities, okay? What are the key business activities? So for the Lego business example, the key business activity is the production of the Lego figures. Okay, so in order, okay, you're gonna pick an activity level. There are a lot of activities, right, going on. There are a lot of activities going on for a business, right? But you have to pick one activity level, and in order to make that activity level useful, okay, so the changes in the level of that activity should be correlated with the changes in cost, okay? So if you pick an activity level has nothing to do with cost, right? So that doesn't help us, right? It doesn't help us because the whole point is we are trying to understand the cost of behavior, right? So we want to know what is the key business activities, how the different costs respond to the changes in the activity levels, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples. Think about the hotel, okay? This is a business hotel, right? Accommodation business. So in this case, what would be a key business activity? So I'm going to give you two options, right? You tell me which one is better, okay? So this is a hotel. The first one is the number of people who have browsed the hotel's website, okay? Number two, the number of rooms occupied. Which of these two activities is correlated with the cost? Anyone?
The number of rooms
occupied?
Yeah, okay, I heard you guys say the same. The number of the rooms occupied, right? How come the number of people who have browsed the hotel's website is not a good one?
Isn't it because they have nothing to do with the cost? Like I can go look at the website, but not actually set a room.
Exactly, right? So eventually, what's really cost the hotel is the number of rooms occupied because, you have to do the cleaning, right? You have to make sure everything is ready for the guest, right? All this, maintenance. So the cost is all related to how many people stay, right, in your hotel, the number of the rooms occupied. Okay, very good. So let's talk about a trucking company. Okay, here's a trucking company. So the business is to receive contract with some of the suppliers, right? So you are shipping the goods for them, right? And you charge them money. So that's the trucking company business. In Lethbridge, there's a very famous one called H&R, right? H&R. Some people make fun of it, hit and run, okay, hit and run, but they are really H&R, right? So that's a trucking company. So in this case, I give you two options. First, the number of trucks on road, okay? Number two, the number of kilometers driven.
The number of kilometers driven.
Okay. Anyone think it should be the number of trucks on road? Okay, that's right. So the number of kilometers driven, right? So
I have a question about that, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be both? Because wouldn't like the number of trucks on the road, if you're buying the trucks and you still have to do like maintenance and stuff on it, as well as the kilometers that they're traveling? Wouldn't it be both?
Yeah, so you are right. I think both are correlated with the cost, right? But which one is better, right? Which one will tap on the concept of the cost better? So for example, you have trucks on road, right? If the truck is stalled there, okay, so it doesn't consume gas, right? You know, you don't have to maintain it, right? Because it's still new, right? So the whole point, all the cost behind this business is about the mileage, right? It's about the usage of the truck, right? So what it would be the best indicator of the usage of the truck? That's the number of the kilometers driven, right? Because every certain number of kilometers, you have to do oil change, right? And you can work it out the cost, the gasoline cost in terms of, you know, per kilometers per unit, right? And in fact, trucking companies, sometimes they make a bill, a portion of their fee is related to the number of the kilometers, the mileage, right? The further the trucks going, they will charge more money on the client, right? So the number of the trucks on road would be a very coarse indicator, right? And the number of kilometers driven is a much refined indicator. So when you compare the two, the number of kilometers driven is a better activity level for the purpose of cost analysis. Does that make sense, Megan?
I asked it, but yes, it does make sense. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Elizabeth? Sorry.
Isabella.
Isabella, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
All good, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so that activity level and the number of the kilometers selected, you know, driven, or maybe the number of rooms occupied, those activity level selected is called the activity index. Okay, the activity index. Okay, so then, then you would see how certain cost responds to the changes in that activity index, okay? And based on that response, we have variable cost, fixed cost, or mixed cost, okay? So that's the three different types of cost. So what is a variable cost, okay? So variable cost would be that the cost per unit, okay, is the same regardless of the level of the activity, okay? The cost per unit is the same, okay, regardless of the activity level. So, you know, if I have one pair of glasses, right? So I need to have two pieces of glasses right here. So, you know, let's say the glasses cost $200, okay? So for one pair of glass, okay? So per unit, so the variable cost for that glasses materials would be $200 per unit, right? Doesn't matter how many glasses, right, you produce, right? That glasses per unit is always $200, right? I'm using the same glasses. So another example would be the gasoline for the trucking company, right? So what is the cost, okay, gasoline cost per kilometer driven, okay? So, you know, we can work that out, right? So that number should be relatively stable, right? If the gas price doesn't change too much, then kilometers per unit driven should be the cost, the gasoline cost for each unit or each kilometers driven should be relatively stable, right? If you consider the gasoline price is relatively stable, okay? So that's variable cost, okay? That's variable cost. So let's translate that description into this graph, right? In this graph, okay, you can see that this is the ABC company manufactures tablets that contain a $10 camera. So each tablet has a camera, and that camera costs $10. Okay, so the variable cost for the camera, okay, that material would be $10. Okay, see, you see the red line? That's a flat line. Okay, equals $10, regardless of how many tablets produced. Okay, because each tablet has to have one camera, and that camera costs $10. Even you produce 1 million, okay, tablets, each one still need a camera, right? That cost is $10. So you can see that for variable cost per unit, okay, is a constant, okay? And then what about the total variable cost? The total variable cost. This is the per unit, right? This is the per unit. Total variable cost will, depending on the number of the production, right? The number of the tablets. So suppose if you are producing $10,000 tablets, okay, and each one costs $10. So for 10,000 tablets, the total cost will be $100,000. Okay, so that's this data point. So for 10,000, so you see these numbers, they're in thousands, right? So for 10,000, and this cost would be 100,000. So this number is also in thousands. Okay, see this data point? Okay. If 2,000 tablets are made, the total cost of camera will be 2,000 times $10, 20,000. Okay, so that will be here, right? So this is 2,000 tablets, and the cost is 20,000. Can you see my cursor? Can you see I'm moving my cursor to
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So you can see that as these tablets produced increasing, your total cost also increasing, and that's a perfect linear relationship, right? That's a perfect linear relationship. In high school, you probably have learned something like this, right? Okay. So for variable cost, if you think about the per unit, that's always the constant. It's a flat line, right? Constant. But for total variable cost, that's really depending on the number of the activity level, okay? And it's a straight line. It's a straight line. For fixed cost, okay, so for fixed cost, so basically that cost remains the same. The cost is fixed, okay, regardless of the level of the activity, okay? Then you think about the per unit, right? Okay, so the cost is fixed. The more units you produce, the cost per unit will be lower, okay? I'm gonna show the picture, okay? So the example would be the hotel building depreciation, right? Doesn't matter how many rooms is occupied, right? The hotel building depreciation is calculated the same, right? Doesn't matter how many rooms occupied or not, okay? So here is an example. Suppose ABC leases its productive facilities for $10,000 per month, okay? So then you think about the total fixed cost is always $10,000, regardless how many tablets produced, okay? It's always $10,000, the total fixed cost, right? Now, what about per unit? Okay, fixed cost per unit, okay? Okay, so now this is the inverse relationship here. So at 2,000 tablets, so if you are producing 2,000 tablets, the total cost is 10,000 per month. So 10,000 total cost divided by 2,000 units. So the fixed cost per unit is $5, right? Per unit. So that's this one. Okay, so if you produce 2,000 tablets, the fixed cost per unit is $5 per unit. Okay, and then if you produce 10,000 tablets, the unit cost will be $1. Why? Because the total cost is 10,000 divided by 10,000 units. So each unit will cost $1. So that's this data point. Okay. So if you keep doing this, you're connecting the data. So this will be the relationship. Okay. This will be the relationship. Do we have any questions so far? It's pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Give me a sum up if you understand so far what I'm talking about. Okay, good. I think for the majority of the class, okay. If you have any question, let me know, okay? If you have any question, let me know. Okay, so let's work on a problem. Okay, let's work on a problem. This is the BE 2.4, okay? The monthly production costs of the company for 2 levels of production are as follow. Indicate which costs are variable, which one is fixed, which one is mixed, and give the reason for each answer. Okay, so we have 2 production level, 2,000 units, 4,000 units. Let's take a look at the indirect labor, okay? Indirect labor, when the units is 2,000 units, that cost is 10,000. When the units doubled from 2,000 to 4,000, that indirect labor is also doubled from 10,000 to 20,000. So can anyone tell me which cost is this? Which type of cost?
Variable.
Variable.
Okay,
Yeah,
very
variable.
good. So that's a variable cost, right? So I'm creating this graph. So you can see that that's the 2 data point, okay? And actually this line nicely goes through the origin point here, okay? So this is a straight line relationship, okay? So as the units production going up, the cost goes up proportionally, okay? The key word is proportionally, okay? So that make it to be a variable cost, okay? Now let's take a look at supervisory salaries. Oh, by the way, you can figure out the indirect labor per unit, that's a fixed. So that will be $5 per unit, okay? So now let's take a look at the supervisory salary. It's the same, $5,000.
Fixed cost.
Fixed cost.
Fixed.
Yeah, you can see that the total cost is a straight line, right? Regardless of the level of the production. And this one, maintenance. This one is a little bit tricky, right? Maintenance, one is 2,000. It's units, the cost is 4,000. When the units is doubled, the cost is not doubled. So this is not a variable cost, right?
Mixed cost.
Mixed cost.
Mixed.
Yeah, mixed cost. So what happened for mixed cost is, if you take a look at this line, it does not go through the 0, 0 origin point, okay? So in high school, you must have learned about some kind of math about this, right? You know something about the intercept? Do you know anything about intercept?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what happened is when this line runs across, okay, this vertical axis, and that data point is 1,000. Okay. So the intercept is 1,000. So that's the fixed component. Okay. That's the red line. That's the fixed component. And then anything above the red line, that's the variable component. Okay. So what happened is the fixed cost component is $1,000. The variable cost is $1.50 per unit. Okay. So you can see that. So 2,000 units times 1.5 per unit, you should have $3,000. And then you plus the 1,000 fixed, you get $4,000, right? And then 4,000 units times 1.5 per unit, so that's 6,000 variable cost. And plus 1,000 fixed cost, together you have the 7,000, right? So this is the mixed cost. It has two components, has a variable component, has a fixed cost component. So how do you know, right? So see, for the indirect labor, this is the variable cost. When units doubled, cost doubled, right? So that's a variable cost. But in this case, units doubled, the cost is not doubled. If the cost is doubled, the maintenance cost should be 8,000 for the 4,000 units, okay? So when you make this picture, okay, you know that this is a mixed cost, okay? Do we have any question on this?
Sorry, I just missed that. How did we get the 1,000?
How do we get this 1,000? I'm going to talk more about this on September 18th, no, 20th, I think. The high-low method. In high school, did you guys learn about the high-low method? So if you have 2 points, right, you need to figure out what's the slope and what's the intercept.
Oh, the rise and run?
Yeah, the rise, right, and the run. So you can use the tangent to figure out the slope, right? And then you can also figure out the intercept for that linear relation. Does that?
Okay.
So the intercept, that's the fixed component, right? That means even when your production level is 0, you still have a intercept cost, right? So even you don't produce anything, right? Your X equals 0, your Y, that equals the intercept, right? So that's the fixed cost. Even you don't produce anything, you still have to pay that amount. So that's the fixed cost.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Good. Okay. Okay, now let's take a look at this picture. Okay. What cost is this? Can anyone tell me?
Mixed.
Mixed.
Variable.
Variable.
Variable mix.
Is this a linear relationship? So far, this is all linear, right? See this line? This is a straight line, right? That means it's linear, right? And this is a straight line, even though there's no slope, it's flat. It's also a straight line. And this is also a straight line, right? So when we talk about all this different cost relationship, it's always a straight line, right? And how about this picture? This is curvature, right?
Curvilinear.
Yeah. So then we have a problem, right? So if you think about from 0 to 100, in the range of 0, from 0 to 100, if you see this picture, this relationship is called curvilinear. It's not linear, it's curvilinear. So this is not a straight line relationship. You cannot say this as either a variable or fixed or mixed, right? Because it's only straight line. You can talk about whether it's a variable or fixed or mixed, okay? So then what should we do? Then we're gonna introduce this concept called relevant range, So let's take a look at the range 40 to 80. So instead of focus on the whole range from 0 to 100, now let's focus, let's zoom in, let's focus on 40 and 80. Okay, now you only see, just look at that shaded area, right? Now, what did you see?
A variable.
Now they look like a straight line, right? Now
Straight line.
straight line. Now this is
linear.
yeah. So therefore, we are saying this is a variable cost in the relevant range of 40% to 80%. Okay. It's not a variable cost in the range from 0 to 100%. Okay, because for that bigger range, it's not a linear relationship. Okay, you can only talk about whether it's variable, fixed, or mixed. Okay, if it's a linear straight line, okay, relationship.
I have
Okay.
a question.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering why it would be a variable instead of a mix, because isn't it like, don't you still have some fixed cost in there because
Yeah,
you're taking part of it?
Yeah, you're right. So if you just just look at it this way, maybe there's an intercept. So therefore, this is probably a mixed cost. You're right. Yeah. If the intercept is 0, then it's a variable cost. Yeah. Okay. So this picture, the whole point is to illustrate the concept of the relevant range. Are we okay with that concept? Relevant range?
So, Professor, we always look from the center.
I will show you a different one. Okay. Okay. Now let's take a look at this one. Okay. So in the range from 0 to 100, this relationship is like step function. This is like your ladder, right? Like the ladder step function, right? So this is definitely not linear. If you take a look at it from 0 to 100, there are 3 steps, right? 2 steps. So can anyone tell me what should I do?
Calculated.
You divide
step
it again?
Okay, divide it again. So tell me what would be a relevant range.
Would it be the same?
40
Yeah,
to 80.
still,
40 to 80?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
okay.
still 40 to 80.
Okay. So if I go from if you see the shade, right? So that's from 30 to 85 probably, right? So in this shade, that's a fixed cost, right?
Fixed cost.
Yeah, that's a fixed cost. Okay. Is this the only relevant range?
No, there's 2 more.
There are 2 more, right? There's 2 more, right? So this one from here to here, that's also 1. And from here to here, that's also 1, right? But the only difference is the amount of the fixed cost is different, okay? The amount of the fixed cost is different. So realistically, can you think about what might be, what kind of scenario may fit into this kind of step function? Can you give me an example?
Increased rent.
Increase rent, okay? So you are saying if you produce more items, they are going to, you increase the rent. So I know what you're saying. So this probably be the situation that, you know, when you rent a factory, right? You have a fixed cost, but you can only produce so much units in that factory. So if you want to produce more than that limit, you have to rent another factory. So you're going to have a second factory. And of course, your fixed cost will increase, right? Now you are renting 2 factories. And then the second factory will also have a limit for production, okay? So then you increase your production. And once you exceed the limit of the second factory, you have to rent a 3rd factory, right? And then that rent will go up again. See, that's exactly like this step function, right? Okay, Nima, you have a question?
No, I was just gonna answer that question you just did.
Mhm. Awesome. Any, Dan?
Yeah, so in other examples, the relevant range would be, well, the percentage would be just each step, right? The length of each step. It's not 30, 85 on every example, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That makes
No,
sense.
No, you're right.
It's each step.
Yeah, each step, yeah. Anyone else? No question? I'll keep going. And this is the picture of the mixed cost, okay? So you can see that it has two components. So this red line that representing the total cost, okay? So for each red line, okay, it has some, if you think about for 300 kilometers, right? 300 kilometers, it's probably around $125 here. So the $125, that's the total cost. So among the $25, 125, you have a $50, the green line, that's the fixed cost, 50. Even you don't drive at all, at zero, you still pay the $50, right? That's your fixed cost. And then the yellow zone, that will be the variable component, the 75, right? This is the 50, that's the 75. Together, that's the total cost, 125. So you have two components, variable cost component and the fixed component, okay? Sometimes we call this semi-variable cost, okay? Sometimes we call mixed cost as semi-variable cost. And now I want to translate into this picture. You probably have done something like this in high school, right? So y equals intercept A plus B, that's the slope, times Q. Q is the X. Is this something you are familiar with?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see A here. So that's where the line run across the vertical axis. So, and from there to the zero, so that's the intercept. So that's your fixed cost, okay? And this is slope, right? This is slope, that's the variable cost per unit. The slope is the variable cost per unit. It's a constant, therefore it's a straight line, right? It's a straight line. Okay, so that's the high school stuff, okay? So hopefully you haven't forgotten those things yet. Okay, so product cost can be either fixed, variable, or mixed. So can somebody give me example of a fixed product cost? Give me one
Would
example.
rent be a fix?
Pardon me?
Rent. Rent.
Rent?
Insurance.
Product cost.
Taxes.
Fixed product cost.
Would it be how much plastic is used to make a Lego?
How much?
Or like the cost of plastic, regardless of how much Lego you make. So the cost of the direct material.
Okay.
So for example, they're probably purchasing plastic at X dollars per pound. So that's always its cost, no matter how much Lego they make.
Okay. If you don't make Legos, you don't need to purchase those materials, right? So the direct materials, those are variable product cost. So the more you produce, that's going to cost you more, right? You need more materials if you want to increase the production level, and that's going to cost you more. So
salaries of indirect labor.
Pardon me?
Salaries of a supervisor, kind of fixed cost.
Okay, what kind of supervisor?
Foreman.
The plant supervisor.
Yeah, the plant supervisor.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah. So if you think about the plant supervisor salary, right? So the supervisor is not directly working on the product, but he is supervising the workers, right? So his labor is indirect labor. right? So it's a product cost. And the salary is fixed. So therefore, the salary paid to a plant supervisor is the product cost and it's fixed. So it's a fixed product cost. So other things would be people say rent, right? The factory rent, right? Not office building. If you are talking about the CEO office, right? Those rent doesn't count, right? That's not product cost. So we are talking about product cost. It has to be factory rent, right? Factory equipment depreciation. So this is all product cost and fixed, okay? How about the variable product cost?
Maybe the
That's
salary
like
that
the
we
product.
pay our employees. So if we're not doing anything, then we don't need them per se. So we're not paying them. So it varies on how much you're producing.
What about when you say employees, right? We have to be more
Oh,
specific.
like
Yeah.
the frontline employees that
Yeah,
are
the workers,
responsible.
right? Yeah.
The workers.
Yeah, exactly. Because only the salary paid to the workers, those are the product costs, right? So that would be the direct labor. So the more product, if you increase your production units, you're gonna have more labor hours, right? So therefore, direct labor would be a variable product
Raw
cost.
material costs.
Yeah, exactly. Direct materials, right? Direct materials, direct labors. This will be all variable product cost, right? So give me one example of the mixed product cost.
Your electricity bill.
Electricity bill,
Utilities?
utilities, very good. Both are correct. Both are correct. So factory utility cost, right? Even you don't produce anything, sometimes you don't use electricity, they charge you a line fee, right? they charge you like a default fee, right? A flat fee, even you don't use any electricity, right? So that would be your fixed component. And then on top of that, the more production you have and the more electricity you are going to consume, right? So therefore, you have both fixed component and a variable component, right? So very good. So Dan, go ahead, Dan.
Wouldn't overtime be a mixed?
Overtime.
Yeah, because it goes up and it's like, so like a frontline worker, when they work 8 hours and then your production level increases, they're now putting in 10 hours. So you got 2 hours overtime. I don't know if that's a really good example. I just was wondering about that. That would be mixed, right?
So that's a very good point, because for variable cost per unit, so that will be remain the same, right? So let's say the direct labor is $20 per hour, right? But for the hours of overtime, they paid $30 per hour. So in that case, it's not like a directly proportionate, right? Because the slope change. So that's a very good point. Yeah. Anyone else?
So Professor, overtime will fall in mixed cost?
Just let me think, okay? So we are talking about the number of units versus the number of units versus the direct labor. If every unit, this is the difference, right? So you think about the fundamental difference between variable cost and mixed cost. So for variable cost, okay, so what happened is the variable cost per unit is constant, okay? But for mixed cost, that per unit is not a constant, right? Per unit is not a constant. So you are saying overtime, but still you think about your units, right? So when you do the calculation, let's say you increase the production level, okay, and then your variable cost, your labor cost, you are saying we are not hiring more employees. We use the same employees, but the same employees, they just work longer hours, right? So if that's the case, you will notice that it's not a straight line, okay? It will be like the slope will be changed, right? So in the beginning, the slope is flatter, and then after that, the units, that's the limit for the normal working hours. After that, you are entering into the overtime. So the overtime is paid higher, right? So therefore, the per unit will go high, will be more. So therefore, the slope will be up, right? So you are seeing, if you draw the graph, so you have a flatter line, and then you have a steeper line. And the difference, the boundary would be that when the units consumed all the normal working hours. So in this case, you can't talk about this in the whole range, right? Because in the whole range, it's not linear. So you can only talk about from 0 to that normal hours, it's a variable, right? And from the that's the relevant range we just learned, right? The relevant range. So from 0 to that limit of the normal working hours, so that will be the variable cost. But after that, it's gonna also be a variable cost, but the slope is steeper, okay? But you have to talk these two in a different relevant range, okay? Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah, Dan, did I answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. The step. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a step, it's different slope, right? Because the variable cost per unit has increased, right? So it's a steeper. So for the line, the straight line, the slope is steeper after the normal working hours.
It's essentially the curvilinear portion of the graph we just saw.
Yeah,
on
you had to talk about
so it's that, yeah, where it gets steeper slope.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, that's if the pay decreases for the amount of hours worked. So yeah, I'm just adding to what you were saying.
Okay, thank you. Okay, very good question. Okay, so now let's talk about the period cost. Okay, so give me examples of fixed period cost.
The CEO salary.
Okay, CEO salary, very good. President salary, okay. How about variable period cost?
Advertisement?
Advertisement. So that means if you produce more, if your production level increase, you are going to increase your advertising fee.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Could that be cleaning costs then?
Pardon me?
Could that be cleaning costs then? The more you produce, the more you have to clean up after things, make sure the floors are tidy, or
Oh, cleaning up cost.
cleaning and maintenance. Your maintenance costs increase
The maintenance cost.
the more you produce. Maintenance.
Yeah. So okay, so that's a very good point. So maintenance cost, is that product cost or period cost?
But
Maintenance.
wouldn't that be a product cost? Oh, sorry.
So maintenance
Okay, yeah, that'd be a
cost.
product cost then.
That's a product cost. Okay, good. So now let's give me example of period cost. So variable.
Professor, I wonder about the point that someone raised earlier about, say, advertising costs. Is it, for example, is it only when because what if we have more products and we want to put it out there, like we want more people to buy, you know what I mean? Won't we increase our advertising costs? Doesn't that make it variable, based on the goal that we want to achieve? Does it always have to be a function of, our production? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a little bit variable in the sense that it depends also on our goal. If we want to enter into a new market, if we want to, penetrate, a different maybe segment of the markets, we will probably reduce and increase based on the objective that we have. Doesn't that make it variable? It's just what I'm wondering about.
Yeah, what I can say is often the decision how much of the advertisement to be made is not driven by the number of the production, right? So it's driven by the competition in the market, right? It's driven by the advertising fee is often driven by the market analysis from the marketing perspective, right? It's not really driven by the production perspective, right? You know, sometimes participants cannot see your application. What does that mean? Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, I can still see
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
So would a selling expense commission would be considered a variable cost?
Okay, yeah, that one, yeah. You mean the commission, right? Commission fee.
Yeah, just like essentially, yeah, you're selling commissions.
Selling.
Yeah, that could be a variable one, or it could be a mixed one, right? Maybe some of the sales people, they have a fixed salary. So you
Would
know,
the cost,
yeah,
would
so
the
for some,
cost of shipping be
A co-
considered a variable cost
yeah,
in
cost
the,
of
in the
shipping.
period?
Yeah, that's a period one. Yeah, cost of shipping. Yeah, the more production you have, the cost of shipping may increase, right? Sometimes the cost is based on weight, right? Sometimes the cost is based on weight. So the more production you have, the cost of shipping probably will be higher. Very good. Yeah. For the sales people, right? If they are purely based on commission, so that will be a variable cost. If you don't sell anything, they get zero, right? If you sell something, you know, then the cost is proportionate, right? They were paid commission fee per unit. But it's also could be a mixed, right? Because sometimes they have a flat salary, like a basic minimum salary, right? So very good. The mixed period cost is the head office utility cost, right? Remember we talked about the factory utility cost. That's the mixed product cost. And for the head office, we're talking about office building, has nothing to do with the production. That utility cost would be a mixed period cost. Okay, are we good with all this? Are we okay with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what time? I don't know where my phone is.
Sorry,
What time is
Professor,
it?
I'm sorry, could I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know, I didn't quite get what you meant when you said advertising cost is not, since we said advertising cost is part of the period cost, and you said it's not variable, a variable period cost, then what kind of cost is it?
Advertising.
Yes,
So
sir.
it could be a fixed cost, right?
Fixed cost.
Fixed cost, okay.
Yeah, it could be a fixed cost because the company just have that amount of budget for advertisement,
Okay.
right? Doesn't matter how much they produce, this is how much money they have set aside for advertisement, right?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the
Okay,
idea is
fantastic.
right. Your advertisement is seen by lots of people, right?
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
not paid by per view, right? It's not like your advertisement is paid cost is related to the number of views of potential customers.
Yeah, true.
So if it's
true.
on the TV, millions of people can see it, right? So if you increase the
Yes.
production, what is the benefit of spending another ad, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, stop. I need a reminder. Like I need to stop the video because I don't want the video too long, right? So we are done with this topic. So we are going to have two videos. So the one long video is really a killer for me. It takes me a long time to process it. So I'm going to stop it for now. So this is one video, okay?